Hi, everyone. My name is Sam, and on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for tonight's event with Joan Nockels Wilson in conversation with Timothy Nockels and Andromeda Romano-Lax, discussing the book of Timothy, The Devil, My Brother, and Me. This new intense memoir chronicles the author's attempt to get an admission from her brother's abuser, a Catholic priest exiled to Rome many years after his crimes. Tonight's event will end with a Q&A, and to submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. If you see a question on the list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, you can click the little like button, and it'll vote for it, and it'll bump it up in the queue, and we will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. Please also feel free to engage with each other in the conversation in the chat area. And we'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them on our website by signing up for our email newsletter. You can follow us on social media at BookSoup, and you can also follow our Crowdcast page right here to get direct notifications. And past events are also available on our YouTube channel. Please support BookSoup and our author tonight by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book. You can do that by clicking the green button right below the viewer screen. It'll redirect you to our website where you can complete the checkout process. And we do have signed book plates from Joan. So we are also selling digital audiobooks and ebooks through Libro FM and Kobo for those interested. And we're open for in-store browsing. So if you're local to Los Angeles or visiting, please come by the store daily from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we would love to see you. And with that said, let me introduce our guests for this evening. Joan Nockels Wilson is a writer and a senior assistant attorney general for the state of Alaska. Joan has served the state of Alaska in both a civil and criminal capacity for more than half of her 25-year legal career. As a criminal prosecutor, she achieved the longest sentence for animal cruelty in the state and recently convicted the hoverboard dentist of over $2 million in Medicaid fraud and reckless endangerment of a host of his patients as part of a mass sedation scheme. When I read that, I was like, what? A native of Chicago and a forever learner, Joan has studied at Northwestern University, University of California, Berkeley, Lewis and Clark College, and the University of Alaska. In addition to her law degree, she holds a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Nonfiction, is a Rasmussen Foundation Individual Artist Award winner, and is a member of the Breadloaf community of writers. Her work has appeared in literary journals and audio shows, most recently Entropy Magazine, Cirque, and Arctic Entries. She lives with her husband, daughter, and a Vizsla named Vivian in the Hillside neighborhood. Did I say that right? In the hill. Sorry, say it.
Vizsla. It's mainly Hungarian. I know. Go ahead.
They're beautiful. In the Hillside neighborhood, appropriately titled Bear Valley in Anchorage, Alaska. And this is her first book. Joan is here with her brother, Tim Nockels, in his home in Vernon Hills, Illinois. Tim was the first of Father John Baptist Ormakia's victims to come forward and the only one to do so publicly. Thanks to his bravery, at least 7 more victims followed. Timothy Nockels has worked in financial futures for 32 years, working his way up from floor runner at the Chicago Board of Trade to his current status as president and owner of Pure Soul, Inc. There he advises Morgan Stanley on the pricing and execution of Eurodollar options and trades on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Tim also serves as the president of the Special Recreation Association of Central Lake County Foundation and as program leader for its core services of providing athletic, theatrical, and equine therapeutic services to children and adults with autism and Down syndrome. Tim and his wife, Lisa, have 2 teenage sons and 2 rescue dogs that you may hear if a stranger comes to Tim's door. And our in-conversation guest, Andromeda Romano-Lax, is the author of 5 novels, including The Spanish Beau, a New York Times editor's choice that has been translated into 11 languages, The Detour, Behave, and Plum Rains. Her most recent novel, Annie and the Wolves, which I will post a link to shortly, is a hybrid combining historical fiction with speculative elements to tell the story of Annie Oakley, who was abused as a child by a couple she would refer to only as the Wolves. The novel was also inspired in part by child sexual abuse in the author's own family. Annie and the Wolves was chosen as a booklist top 10 work of historical fiction and was one of Reader's Digest's top 50 fiction books of 2021. She lives in British Columbia. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to our guests. Thank you all so much for being with us at Book Soup tonight, and thank you to our guests at home. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Tim, I'll give you a little break and turn the camera so you don't have to stare at it the whole time. Okay. Let's see here. Well, hi everyone. Thank you to Book Soup. Thank you to Sam Andromeda. Thank you so much. We'll tell the audience about how long we've known each other and how much we have in common. But we'll start with a brief reading. So you have the context that I traveled to Rome to get a long-sought admission from the priest who abused my brother. I'm going to be reading to you about my actual desire of what I wanted to do to that priest. And for setting, I just want to let you know we're in the Cathedral of St. Paul and John. St. Paul is the founder of the Passionist order, which the priest belonged to. So I'm in the church coming up with a plan. Standing in the church's entry, waiting for a priest to say or not say Mass, I know one thing about myself. I don't want to be a person without choices. But what, if anything, makes me any different than any other murderer? At a millisecond's notice, I could close my eyes and see my small brother. I could see Charlie, another boy, being convinced to place a grown man's. I could hear the music Kurt had blaring on the car stereo just before he smashed it into that tree. And I could feel the walls of denial squeezing Greg even tighter. I inhaled my father's despair, and I exhaled my mother's delusions. And then I looked up. I see him, not Ormache, but the larger-than-life portrait of Jesus kneeling in the Garden of Gethsemane. His elbows push into a rock, and his bare feet grip against the earth like he's willing himself to stand, but can't muster the final move. His chest is open, and his chin is outstretched. He doesn't know it, but a beautiful angel stands in front of him. Her right hand is raised as if she's saying stop, and in her left hand, she extends a full cup. In the gospel, according to Mark, at this moment, Jesus is to say, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but what you want. The angel appears to be giving the answer. Take the cup. Take the cup. What does this mean in my case? Take the cup of healing, my recent words unexpectedly provided, or take the cup of representative for the lost boys as witness, as truth teller, maybe even revenge seeker. Which is it? Just outside the side chapel is a circular display of votive candles. I light 7 of them in total, 1 for each of the known victims and 1 also for me. I pray for the men's happiness. I pray for the wives, girlfriends, or maybe even boyfriends who love them. I pray for their children. I pray laughter comes easy and that they always know they'd seen worse. I ask for each of them 1 miracle, and still, despite my good and best intentions, I pray for one more thing. I pray the flames rise up and burn this place to the ground. As soon as the prayers left my lips, however, I know best to regret it. That's because I know better than most what comes next after the rubble has cooled. The last full day my uncle lived was Tim's 19th birthday. Dan reported to Engine Company 7 on Belmont Avenue, to Captain Hook and Ladder Truck 58, as he had done for the last 7 years. After the fire bell rang at 3:47 on February 1st, 1985, Truck 58 was the second apparatus on scene. And one could also debate whether what happened next was due to the unusually heavy snow that had accumulated on a 3-story flat roof, or perhaps a maintenance crew who forgot to strengthen the rooftop joists before installing a commercial-sized air conditioning unit that previous summer. But neither of these would have been factors if John Hangbei hadn't given Suk Jung Kun 2 video set recorders and $3,000 to set his own store on fire. At 4:01 a.m., a woman in an adjacent 3rd-floor apartment building heard one fireman scream. It was Sam Lasko who recalled Fortion's first cut into the roof. A flame shot through the opening, and he heard a scream. At Bay's first-degree murder trial, he told the jury, the captain was a big guy. The flame was shooting over his head. This we do know. When the air conditioning unit broke free, Dan, the 2 Michaels, and Sam Lasko went down with it. Although engulfed in fire from his hips to his knees and face to neck, Sam somehow managed to climb out. Not before, however, witnessing my uncle in flames and Forcion just gone. He'll recall climbing up a beam that fell into the flames with them. But Billy Carta will tell them that before Carta jumped, he saw there was no beam, and it was more like he walked up the air, or who knows, maybe the arm of God or something. As for Dan and his crew, we tell ourselves they died instantly. We say they were knocked unconscious by either the air conditioning unit or the blunt force of hitting the floor. And despite autopsy reports to the contrary, we link no cause of death to the flames that burned their bodies beyond recognition and melted their helmets to their scalps. No fireballs consumed their throats, no panic-filled thoughts occupied their minds. After 4 weeks of intensive care and numerous skin grafts, surviving firefighter Sam Lasko was released from the hospital. About a year after the blaze, he was featured in People magazine, still wearing a plastic milk mask filled with antibacterial cream to protect his face from infection. He told the magazine, "As for the arsonists who set that fire, I'm still really mad at them. Maybe I could understand if they were poor, but if they set that fire out of nothing but greed, I'd like to do to them what they did to me." That's why I know this idea of wishing people on fire is so cruel that the desire must always have an origin. For Sam, it came from seeing the videotapes of the body recovery. He said it made him sick to his stomach. When he watched it, he felt like he was in a room without a door and he wanted out. As for Ormache, my desire to set his church and him on fire likely stemmed from this recognition after he molested Tim countless times in our home. He still chose to join 30 other priests on Holy Name Cathedral's altar to say the funeral mass for my uncle. If Dan could have grabbed that asshole by the throat from the casket, I have no doubt he would have. Part of me now believed that was up to me. But I still want him here. I want the man I knew. The uncle who would be pissed off if someone cut his life short or raped his nephew. I want the insect body that the mantle of the soul and life enfolded. I want his help. Because like Sam Lasko, God help me, I still want someone to burn. And if I can't do it myself, if I'm no killer, I hope it won't be too much to ask Dan, or maybe even my patron saint as well, for a little divine intervention. My illusion goes like this. I fantasize that on this church's Baroqueified front altar under gleaming chandeliers, Ormache will place his hands under the water streaming from an altar boy's glass pitcher, and recite the words said to be those of Pontius Pilate. Lord, wash away my iniquities and cleanse me of my sins. God's answer, however, will be no. Then, without one of my hands in its creation, a queen of heaven golden ray delivered on point will strike, igniting flames around him. Be it Ormaché's death by boiling blood vessels, carbon monoxide poisoning, heat stroke, or shock from the pain, both Dan and Joan of Arc will be there to see it. Ormachet would eventually be engulfed, clothes burning, flesh singeing, scalp melting. But before his last breath, before his eyes liquefy, his last vision will be of me. He will reach out, beseeching, asking for help. He will try to speak, but he can't be heard. Why? Because fires, you see, scream and bang and whistle and pierce the air more than you could ever imagine. They have voices of their own, voices you cannot control. And only a strong, loud voice can speak over them.
I will say thank you for that. As the other person on the screen here, thank you for that powerful reading. And originally, Joan and I talked about me following up with a short reading from Annie and the Wolves, but I'm so eager for this conversation to get started. I think I'm going to skip over the reading and just explain very briefly what Annie and the Wolves is about so that the audience can get an idea of some of the overlaps between Joan and myself. So Annie and the Wolves, which is a novel, tells the story of a modern historian named Ruth, who finds her life increasingly intertwined with that of her subject, the 1800s sharpshooter Annie Oakley. When Annie Oakley was a child, she was sent away for 2 years to live with a farm family who abused her. And later, in her unfinished autobiography, she would refer to them only as the Wolves. So when the novel opens, the historian Ruth has just received a journal that seems to belong to Annie Oakley that promises to start revealing some of these childhood secrets of this famous woman. But as Ruth gets deeper into the story, she comes to discover that the darkest secrets and the darkest impulses she has to face are really her own. So this becomes a novel that takes place both historically and in the present, that is partly about the desire for possible vengeance and dealing with trauma in the past. So just by chance, Joan and I were working on these projects. We both lived in Alaska at the time, where Joan still lives. I now live in Canada. And without even knowing it, we were both exploring some of these same themes, myself in a novel, and of course, Joan in the book of Timothy, which we're so excited to celebrate tonight. So that explains a little bit about why I'm here. So if I can start with a question, and this is a question that memoirists and readers of memoir know comes up all the time. It's about the right to tell a story. So Joan, how do you answer that question about, especially because I know the gestation for this book was a really long time, about how you felt you had a right to tell the story or how it evolved over time?
Well, can I say I'm still not sure of what right I have to tell the story, but let's tell how it started. And Tim, you can chime in too. Tim, as noted in the introduction, was one of the first people to come forward against the predator priest who stalked him and molested him in our own home. And Tim sued the Archdiocese of Chicago, the Passionist Order, and the priest. He also sought criminal retribution, through a criminal trial that statutes of limitations had passed. By the time a settlement was reached, the agreement contained the standard, and I say this as a civil attorney, the standard line in a settlement agreement. The other party provides no admission of wrongdoing. And imagine how that feels to a victim of clergy sex abuse. No admission of wrongdoing. People enter into settlements because they want to get on with their lives. But what Tim really wanted to do was make a difference And to hear that, how does that make a difference? So I think I might have said, well, let's tell your story. And is that fair?
Yeah, no, definitely.
So that started in 2004. And as a writer, I wasn't a writer. I was a lawyer. I was a new lawyer, a baby lawyer. I always wanted to write. I always wanted to write a different book about my family. But I started trying to write Tim's story for about 3 years, realized, oh, I can't tell his story. I have to tell my story, which is a different focus. It's the concentric circles of clergy sex abuse. And then that turned into, I better learn how to write, so I better go get my MFA. And then that turned into, this story isn't done. Tim wants an admission. There's only one way to get it. If I take him to Rome, I know what's going to happen. He's not going to wait on a fire. So I need to go get it. From then on, though, every step of the way, through the drafting, through the, the looking for agents, looking for publishers, through getting a publisher, through copy editing, through every step, almost up until last week, when this book was launched, it would be a look to Tim to say, are we still good? And gracefully, his answer has always been yes. I believe it still is.
Oh, yeah. Yep, definitely.
So I don't have the right to be in the place of any victim of clergy sex abuse. I will always be outside that door. But I have a good warrior spirit, and I wanted to put that to use.
Wonderful. Well, you and I have spent a lot of time already talking about this how fantasies of either justice or vengeance kind of can take over our lives. And that's what I tell in my novel, fictionally. But again, just so viewers understand, as Joan knows, I was inspired to write my novel based on things that had happened within my own family. And of all my novels, Annie and the Wolves took the longest. That's another parallel we have, in part because I had to push away from some of the autobiography and find a way to tell the story. But so I wasn't aware until just now, just this evening, even though I've read the book, love the book, I wasn't aware that the notion of going to Rome to confront the priest was not from the very beginning of the project what you intended to do.
No, I mean, I think the goal was to tell Tim's story, tell the perspective of the victims. Tim wanted that admission of wrongdoing, and I think I put that in the back of my head. Our friend David Stevenson, he's like, you're done. Publish this. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel done. And then I realized, oh, this isn't Nockels Wilson. She needs the confrontation. And it was born on a night of the Chinook winds in Anchorage, Alaska. You know what the Chinook winds are, those very powerful hurricane force winds. And it came to me like Marley's ghost. This is the step you need to take. We're going to take you back to Chicago past and to Rome future.
The reason that I was looking for a confession or him to say, well, for one, he never apologized to anyone. I received a letter sort of apologizing from the Chicago Archdiocese.
They spelled your name wrong.
They spelled my name wrong, yeah. All these other things that were just, I was obviously just something that they wanted to sweep under the rug. But in my affidavit, I said one thing, and the one thing that I said is get him away from children. No matter what, I don't care if you do, whatever happens, that's the only thing I want. Get him away from children, period. I don't want that name father in front of his name. I'm a father. Fathers don't do that to kids, okay? I want maybe a number for him, a prison number, and it should be 666, because he is the devil.
And we named the book right, The Devil, My Brother.
Most definitely.
Yeah, it's a good title. Well, speaking of fathers, I know that Joan wanted me to explain, again, because of the strangeness and novelist part of this conversation. She had asked if I would explain a little bit about the origin of the story for Annie and the Wolves. I stumbled upon a footnote that Annie Oakley had been abused by this farm family as a child, which is something most of us don't think about when we think of this American historical figure. But it happened that just around the same time, the man I thought was my father was dying in Mexico. And on his deathbed, we got word that this would be our chance to say goodbye to him. And, my two sisters and myself, we were told we were also not very good daughters because we were not there at his bedside. And that was the time that I had to tell other relatives what this man had done to my sisters, which is sexually abuse them. So speaking of fathers and what fathers do. And it was also at this time that one of my sisters said she might want to pay him a visit, go on a road trip to Mexico, and perhaps even bring a gun. So again, this strange overlap as a sister, at least for a time, I was really trying to understand what is my responsibility? How do I be a witness to the sibling? What if this sister gets in legal trouble? What are we supposed to do about this when there's somebody, we might potentially go on a trip and have a real vengeance scenario. So that was very real for me. And I know it's possibly even more real for you, Joan, because you made the trip to Rome. And before tonight, you mentioned to me that you had concerns, something I hadn't thought about as a lawyer, not just as an individual, as a sister, but also as a lawyer. Can you explain that?
Sure. One side point, I made the trip alone because I knew if he was with me, as I said, he wouldn't be coming back. I'm a lawyer. I'm a protector of the law. That's who my ultimate duty is. I prosecuted crimes. I put people in prison. I've thought of being a judge. I've applied to be a judge. I think I have a good ethical, moral core for that. Yet I have a 300-page plus book about me desiring to kill a man and being very happy if I had that strength. I also talk about, some of the emotional effects on me, depression, fury. How capable am I? So in the end, though, if you're going to be a memoirist, the only way to do it is with brutal truth and honesty. So I had to attack my core, expose it for the reader so they could make their own choice as to what, made me go forward. I have a faulting characteristic of trying to rescue, that's not that healthy of a quality. And sometimes I take it too far. Everyone who sees me now in the legal community will know pretty much everything about me. And I still don't know the impact of that.
So that's the professional side. And then Tim, do you have anything more to say? It's amazingly hard to know what we would really do in a situation, right? Until we're right there. But what do you have to say about that?
I would really have to think about that a little bit more. It's hard for me to come to a conclusion. Obviously, if I was on a plane with Joan, that wouldn't happen.
We wouldn't let it, yeah. But
yeah,
you can engage in the fantasy. That's all right.
Yeah, obviously. I wouldn't be there long. Let's just put it that way. I've heard people say that he's back in town, and it's put me in. It put me in the car. I was give me a direction, point me in the direction. But obviously it was not true.
Well, it took a while to track that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
we thought he was here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Can I read what you wrote to Ormache as your last kind of salvo to him?
Sure.
Okay. So one of the last things I gave the priest was this note that came in a text stream to me. Ormache, I'm trying to understand the saying, everything happens for a reason. Did I draw a number before birth, a fucking lottery quick pick? Hey, you win years of sexual abuse as a child that will haunt you until you die. I wanted to put something on paper for you, shithead, but I decided not to waste my time. Scum of the earth should be placed in prison, not given an office with a view. But you should know you did not win. I'm happy to be clean again, including free of the shit you and your employers shove down people's throats. I relish the fact that my children will never be forced to endure your egotistical self-prescribed drug. In my opinion, from Satan all the way down to the Pope and his peons, you're all part of one drug cartel. You serve no purpose. I don't need to pray for forgiveness for believing this. I don't need to be part of an organization. I choose to be good and to help my kids make good choices. Know one more thing. If I ever see you again, I will not hesitate. Have a paralyzing stroke, old man, so nobody has to listen to your crap anymore. John Baptist Ormache, CP, child predator. I don't know. I just think that kind of says it all. Better than I did in 300 plus pages.
I think it's interesting that this material is difficult and dark, and yet as a reader, I can say that reading it, for anyone who has gone through it or knows anyone else who has gone through anything similar, still feels healing. I won't say, I'm not going to reach for lyrical words, but it does feel healing. And I'm curious about that psychological impulse to be able to kind of live through these scenarios so that the reader, whatever version of this they've experienced, can get some sense of catharsis. Have either of you had those thoughts about what in a positive way, what this does for the reader to follow this story?
I would say that obviously I went through a self-destructive phase. I was well on my way to early death in my late teens to 20s with drugs and alcohol and guns and looking for trouble. I didn't find the trouble that I was looking for all the time, but I came close. Obviously, I wasn't never willing to do anything to take my life myself. I figured I'd go out a fun way, but obviously, once you come to grips and I met my wife, we settled down. We started talking about kids. We had 3 dogs in a loft in downtown Chicago. I was starting to do very well in my job, and once she was pregnant, that's basically when I was sitting on the train going, and I was just reading about those boys in Boston that were abused, and said I can't be a good father if
If you didn't stand up.
If I didn't go after them.
So that's what you did.
Yes. But all said and done, my end story right now is I'm extremely happy. I really am. I have a thriving business. I surround myself with incredible people, family and friends. It's the good thing about getting old is you weed out the bad things and you grab on to the good things. And that's it.
That comes through in the book. And can I also say, because this will not be apparent from what people are hearing so far, but this book also has, it has a sense of again, that vicarious, that relief that comes from seeking the truth, of seeking some form of justice. And surprisingly, it has humor. It has life and love. They've got that in the background. Chicago, the setting of Chicago plays an important part. Family history plays an important part. There's Cubs, there's firefighters. A lot in this memoir that just gives a sense of life and richness, even beyond the story of the priest.
I know exactly what you're doing, Andromeda. You're helping the reader say, pick up this book. You will not be depressed. And I really appreciate that. I could offer this in addition to Tim's little answer, which not little, huge answer. I wrote this book with knowing that the readers would need breaks. I mean, knowing that they will need to take time away from the subject. Some people have read the book in a day. Some people have taken 3 months, and I get it. You take as long as you need. This book, however, my pain began when Tim was about to become a dad. That's when my whole childhood disappeared, because I thought it was pretty great. So I then had to go back and reassess and gather and hold on, and maybe hold on to more of that anger that other people had let go of. And you see my gripped hands. I think by the end, the reader will see open hands. So I have to be patient with the journey, including the faith journey, which is a big part of this.
Well, and that's what I was speaking to. Also the catharsis, because if this book had not included the trip to Rome, it would have been a very different book. So you did what very few people would be willing to do. And that allows us to break through some of that frustration, that actual confrontation with what happened. And so although I understand that some people would need breaks, I think that's why for other people, it's a compulsive page turner, because you want to find out what happens. Is what we all wish we could do with the people that have done wrong to us is face them.
Right.
Let me talk about the writing a little bit, because I'm not sure you've had a chance to talk about the actual writing process. You mentioned to me that you had an important mentor, Judith Barrington, who encouraged you. I think she said something like, it's your job to open the door. And that image of the door is really important in the book. Can you explain that?
So sure. First, let me start with the door. I don't think we made this clear that we come from a family of 7, 6 girls and 1 boy. And one of the things I thought that was great as the only boy was you get your own bedroom. The rest of us were, 2 to 3 to a room. I remember being extremely jealous of that. I also remember standing in the vestibule outside Tim's bedroom looking at this closed door, kind of locked in that hallway where the priest was supposedly counseling Tim, knowing in my heart something was very, very wrong. We just did our launch at the Irish American Heritage Center with a lot of classmates. All the kids knew something was wrong. The parents and the teachers, I still, even though I write about them, I still can't fully understand why anyone would allow even a nice person in a room with a child with a closed door. So that closed door haunted me many, many years. Once Tim told me I knew in my heart, I prayed it wasn't true, I think, and his silence helped me think it wasn't true. But as soon as he started talking, I saw that door. That's the door. Then as a writer, I had to figure out how to tell this story. And I'm an orator. I give opening arguments, closing arguments. I like the sounds of words. I like lyric. I like jumping in and jumping out. I tried to do that with Tim's story. And I never opened the door. I never went in. I just talked about the door. And Judith, who's written the memoir writing From Truth to Art, I might have From Art to Truth to Art. I might have that off a little bit, had said, you got to open the door. You got to open the goddamn door. You got to go in. So not only did I enter Tim's door, I had to enter the door of everything within me, fueling my actions. And guess what, writers? When you open the door and look inside, you actually get a germ of beauty, a bud of beauty, not a germ. And it keeps growing and growing. And you look for a lot more open doors after that.
Thank you. Let's talk about impact, especially desired impact, because we're already at 6:40. We want to leave time for some questions. But for each of you, what is the impact that you think the book could have, that you wish it could have?
Can I give the last word to you and
Sure.
just give my little thing? Difference between us, I'm still Catholic. I love it. Really angry Jesus. I love the Jesus that goes in and knocks all the, the thieves out of the temple for selling their goods, their wares. I also love receiving the Eucharist, receiving Christ. That's a very, very important thing for me. I can't do it more than once every few months because I can't handle everything that goes with it. I can't handle the church sweeping us under the carpet and replacing us with, new Catholics, either the converted or people from where the religion is just growing. I can't stand that the first prayer in the prayers of the faithful is the prayer to the Pope for the well-being of the Pope and the priest. I can't stand that the second prayer is not for every victim of clergy abuse. I can't stand that there are statues in the Vatican to popes who defiled people, and there's nothing for victims of clergy abuse. This is our history. We have to face it. We have to acknowledge it for our religion, whatever can be salvaged of it. And frankly, I think we really have to go back to the time when women had a role in the church in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, which is another premise approached here, to heal it. But nothing's going to happen if people aren't honest from the pulpit. And if the parishioners as well, and I know a lot of Catholics, a lot of my friends, if they look at us and realize this is a lifelong journey, it doesn't stop because the news stories stop. So that's what I want to.
I think that for the church to be able to survive, I mean, hypothetically in my own mind, is they would need to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
I said it before, where growing up as a father, or even with my father, if something broke, I would put duct tape on it, and duct tape is an easy fix, but it's like a Band-Aid. You pull that Band-Aid off, you're exposing the wound again. I had a big wheel, probably with 8 to 10 years of duct tape on it before we threw it out. It's trash. It doesn't fix the problem. And the problem with the church starts at the absolute top. The leaders, they need to go in place. The people need to be a big role in it. When you look at behind me, you see family and love and home. The only reason that there is a home and love is because of family. So I'm okay. I mean, I have a great relationship with God. The thing with the church is man got in the way of God. I took the middleman out of the equation, and God and I are okay.
Thank you for that. Let's see if we've got questions. I see one. Let's just go to, how do we know Ormache is no longer molesting children?
Good question. You go, and then what do you think?
I mean, outside of him being probably
83.
in his 80s,
Yeah.
mid 80s, I don't care if he's not molesting kids. I shouldn't
No,
say
you
that.
do.
Of course, I would. I mean, if I heard he was, I'm on a plane.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that anyone be able to stop that. But just having him be able to sit in a room with a child, just to have him, I know what he's thinking.
Right. He may not be able to do the act, but he still has the
Yeah,
thoughts.
just the thought process of a monster like that sitting in a room with a child, thinking about what he could do if those parents weren't there.
Did you?
Go ahead.
So when I don't want to spoil the story too much, but when I met with him, he said two things that put me a little bit at ease. Because one, there is a park, a children's park, less than 200 yards from his front door. And I sat there and I watched children, and I looked at the bell tower and wanted to say so much there. But he said two things when I met with him. One, he doesn't drive. He drove to all his abusers, all his victims' houses, and infiltrated himself into families. And two, he said, I don't really speak Italian.
Right.
And it took me like a day to get comfort that his main tools were gone. Add to that his age, and I have, some degree of relief. Add to that the fact that I've already seen portions of this book and articles about it translated into Italian. So, Mr., I will not call him anything than that, Ormache, you are known. People will look at you. Look on my website. You can see his picture, joannockelswilson.com. You can't hide anymore. Behind your narcissism, behind your smile, behind your cologne, behind your false homilies, behind your prayers, behind your argument that God has forgiven you. No.
That sounds like a closing statement. I don't think we could do much better than that unless we have more questions. So we definitely want to give people just a minute or so in case there's any other questions. Please feel free to ask. And while we're waiting, yeah,
I was going to see if I could ask a question of you, Andromeda.
Sure.
So, what relief did you get from your own kind of revenge voyage? You have a few, by the way, Andromeda's book is fantastic at a lot of levels. One, she gets to travel back in time and actually, one, change history a little bit to stop some acts, but two, allow her protagonists to confront people. Knowing your history and your family's history, what did this book and voyage bring to you?
Well, so there's many layers to that question, and we definitely want to make sure we honor the question that's in the chat. But I would say there's so much I'm aware of now that I wasn't aware of when I was writing the book. One of them was that I didn't realize even how much I was basically living through my own need for a vengeance scenario. I thought I was just telling a story. But even when I finished the book, I didn't realize, and this is sort of what I was alluding to before with you, Joan, I didn't realize that there is a healthy aspect just to putting it down on paper, sharing it, mentally living it. I think it's helpful for the person telling the story. I think it's helpful for people reading the story. And that's one service that literature, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, can offer us. But in my particular story, there's another theme of, because it's not just about Annie Oakley and it's not just about this historian, there's also a lot of teens in the story. And there are people that are ignoring what's happening. There's a bystander issue of teachers, of spouses saying, don't slander this coach, don't say bad things. He's retiring soon anyway. He's getting older. There's that same getting older issue. He's out of harm's way. Let's just not do anything about it. And I think that's very real. I think that we actually need to sort of train ourselves to prepare ourselves to look for teenagers who are acting a certain way and not just assume it's because of adolescence, to speak up even when we're not sure, those sort of things. So of the many things that's come out of this book, I didn't intend for it to be necessarily a guide in any way. I don't write books with a message, but the message I get from it now that it's done is watch out for people around you, look in your own community, and try to say something. So I hope that answers part of the question.
Yeah. This book explores the teachers, the parents, including our own, who, were the enabler. He groomed them as much, but they ended up enabling his conduct. And if anyone here is affiliated with the Infinite Mind podcast, Andromeda and I really want to get on there and talk about the healthy aspects of revenge fantasy. So I'm going to throw that out. I haven't let that one go for Andromeda.
Good. So we do have a question here. Joan, is there anything you wish you had included or excluded from the book?
It's a long book, and brevity would probably be better. So let me start with Excluded. There are some scenes. Yeah, I can think of something. So when Tim was 16, he engaged in conduct that got the priest and our principal's attention. And the priest came to my father and said, Tim's doing this, and because I know you so well, I won't report you to the police. I won't report him to the police. And when my father approached Tim told him he was doing this because of what the priest did to him. And my father said, don't you ever speak that way about a Catholic priest again. And Tim did not until he was in his 30s. I am cruel in this book to my father. I had a lot of anger. My mother's means of dealing with this was cut away. I use an example. I was married to my first husband, a double wedding with my younger sister. And when I got divorced, my mother just cut me out of the wedding album, me and my husband. And that's how she kept her faith. She just cut away the thoughts of that. I think I was kinder in my book to my mother than I was to my father. It took their dying, my mom in 2015 and my dad in 2017, to get closer to forgiveness. Much of this was written, before that, still in the editing process. I guess that to answer that question, I wish I could have excluded or better explained some of the cruelty. And I wish I had the gift of forgiveness at the time to include it more in the book. Tim did.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's obviously I had a very strained relationship with my dad. My mom and I were always pretty tight, but my dad was overbearing. It's hard being this only son of a 6'8", 300-pound ex-Marine firefighter.
He wasn't always 300 pounds. Yeah, he was a big guy.
It just made me extremely fast. I was quick to get away, but whenever I was in real trouble, it's when my mom would trap me, and she terrified me a lot more than my father did, actually. And it's hard to believe, but
little lady. She was 5'5".
Yeah, but all she had to do was give you that look, that Irish look, and you were done. You knew you were busted.
And is it fair to say that your children never got to spend a night at their grandparents' house?
Yeah, I think that's probably it doesn't, when you're goes through a abuse like this. Unfortunately, it doesn't end with you. if you think about it, he abused my children too. He took their grandparents away from them. I was full-fledged panic attacks. Out of how many grandchildren? 10, 11 grandchildren? 10 or 11 grandchildren. I don't want to do the math right now. My two boys are the only ones that never stayed at Grandma and Grandpa's house overnight because I was terrified of who they would let in that house. I couldn't do it. Essentially, they took my kids' grandparents from them. That's a terrible thought, but I told my parents that, and it obviously made them sad. We went through it. It's you just got to keep battling. Like I said, I'm very, very happy. I wouldn't change anything outside of those 3.5 to 4 years of abuse by this monster. That's it.
We have one last question, and then we'll invite Samantha back in. And I think you've actually answered this in some ways, but just if you have anything else to add. So Linda asks, thanks for sharing. I'm curious how you went from a place of self-destruction and pain to a place of healing and growth. And you've talked about your family, you've talked about many things, but do either of you have any final things to say about how you've arrived at a place of healing and growth?
I'll give you the last word.
I think obviously if somebody is going through or has been going through something, it doesn't have to be sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, it doesn't matter. But if you can find a way to just breathe and look for the helpers, in your family, if not in your family, your friends that obviously it's a lot to confide in, and obviously, I understand, if you're young, you're a teenager, the last thing a teenage boy wants to do is hear about what is, a bad experience his friends are going through, but find somebody else then, just keep looking for somebody to be on your side. I mean, obviously, if my thought with God, I didn't need a church anymore to have a relationship with God. And it actually made my church 1,000 times stronger than the Catholic Church. I'm allowed to be angry and swear at my God. I'm allowed to threaten him. But in the end, I'm fine.
And just the tie-in on this journey to Rome, I felt God's presence and guidance many steps of the way, and many coincidences, what I call everyday miracles, let me know that although Tim wasn't with me, I was not alone.
Thank you. Wonderful. We're at 2 minutes to the hour, and I know Samantha was going to come back in, maybe say a few final words. If she takes a moment, I'm just going to say again, as someone who's read the book, that it's a wonderful book, and I recommend it to absolutely everyone.
Yes, I would second that. You can get the book at the green button below the screen. We have signed book plates. And I just want to say thank you to Joan and Tim for being with us and sharing your story. It's really important and really brave. And I went to Catholic school, and I have my feelings, so I hear what you're saying a lot. So thank you for sharing your story, and thank you, Andromeda, for being with us and being in conversation and sharing your story as well.
Thank you for letting me be part of it. As someone who went to Catholic high school and college and lived in Chicago, thank you as well.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
Catholic school, so. And thank you to everybody listening, and please support your local bookstore, especially this one right here, Book Soup.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Everyone have a wonderful rest of your weekend.